What happens when one man dares to bring together the titans of reggae? When legends like Toots, Gregory Isaacs, Luciano, and Michael Rose share the same mic? That's not just an album, that's history in the making. And the man who made it happen is Ralph Sall. With the mighty Rootsmen, he created reggae's own traveling Wilburys, a dream team of voices and rhythms that the world thought it would never hear together again. And with the Kingston Lions, he gave the spotlight back to the unsung studio kings, the players behind reggae's golden era, now reborn with fire, fidelity, and soul. Yes, this is the same Ralph Sall who's produced blockbuster soundtracks and Hollywood hits, but in reggae, he's something more. He's the bridge between past and future. The architect who honors the roots while building the next chapter. He's not just a producer. He's the super producer reggae never knew it had until now. And now, Ralph Sall steps into the Reggae Hour. Don't miss this exclusive interview, October 7th at 7 p.m. Central. Tune in on iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Apple Music, and at reggaehour.com. This is more than an interview, this is a reggae revival. Don't just hear about it, be part of it.
Ralph, how you doing this evening? It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. Always look forward to talking about music, and it's always interesting. So, I'm here and happy to get going.
All right. I appreciate you joining us, man. And you got to start by taking us back, man. Like, what first pulled you into music, and how did your early family life shape that journey?
I honestly can say music has been part of my life since I was the littlest kid. I used to collect top 40 charts for the AM radio station, and I'm from Miami, Florida, so which obviously influenced my love of reggae, because reggae is always big in that part of the world. But, it just started when I was a little kid, got becoming a big record collector from a young age. I can remember having, Bob Marley, Catch a Fire, and Natty Dread, and Burnin', and Rastaman Vibration, all of those when they were new. Really got into all sorts of music. When I finally became old enough to make records, I was never limited by a particular genre. So I've jumped around from pretty much everything you could think of, whatever caught my fancy at the moment is what I would do. I've been lucky that.
All right, man. That's right. That's when you let the creativity spark your interest. You don't let the work drive you. You let the creativity drive you. And that's what I love, and how you can cross genres. But after you cross so many genres, what made you come to reggae? What called you to reggae as a producer?
Well, I, as a kid, had all the classic reggae records. I just collected them, so I always liked them. I always had them playing right next to whatever, classic rock was going on, and never really put boundaries in between those things. And, I think the first reggae record I actually ever made, I did a session with Ika Mouse that never came out, but the first one that came out was a session I did with Burning Spear for an album I made called Dedicated, which was songs of the Grateful Dead. And I got Burning Spear on that, which was my first recording experience in Kingston, and was back several times since.
Oh man, how do you reconcile, like, when you was a youth, did you ever think that you would ever be growing up to produce some of the greatest musicians that ever touched this genre in any music genre?
I never, I literally grew up as a super fan of music. And after I went to school, I moved to LA and started my career in the movie business. But when I decided to leave to make records, it was because I had been involved in some soundtrack work on movies that I worked on, and saw that it was something I could actually do. You know, when I was young, they all just looked like heroes to me. Like, how could I actually do that? Until I was here, and I was like, okay, I can actually do it, and was lucky. And I've produced hundreds of artists over the years, and it's been a fun ride.
Oh man, I bet it has. I mean, like, after all those years, you seen all the music change. You seen the artists change. Which era do you actually say was like the era where you believe they had it? They had it. They had they had the knowledge, they had the business. Everything was just a perfect ecosystem.
Well, I mean, as a fan, I grew up, you know, first with, classic 60s rock, the Beatles, Rolling Stones, uh, and then I was into 70s and 80s and 90s. And I started making records in the late 80s, early 90s. I still was a fan, and I think that a large part of the success that I've been able to have over the years was because I never lost the fan gene. I've always been a fan, and when I work with big artists, I'm always trying to get them into a space that probably was close to classic things that I remember them doing. And, there's always music going on in my head. So, in terms of being a professional, I would definitely say I loved working in the 90s, probably the best. It was kind of a era where there were so many bands and so much music going on that it just was nonstop. But, as I like to say, my favorite project is the next one. So we'll see what comes
I
next.
hear that.
Yeah.
Right. There's always something brewing up there. There's always something better coming around the corner. I feel that. I feel that. Now, when you had the mighty Rootsmen turn rock legends like Fleetwood Mac and Tom Petty into reggae classics, what inspired you in the moment to produce that?
Well, my initial thought that turned into the Mighty Rootsmen was that I thought that why hadn't there ever been like a traveling Wilburys of reggae? Like, I didn't ever remember a superstar collaboration in the reggae field. So that made me think, why don't I try to put that together? And that's what I did. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, you did.
uh, getting Sly and Robbie, and in fact, reuniting the classic band Word, Sound, and Power, who had backed Peter Tosh, who happened to have been the first concert I ever went to in my life.
Oh yes.
uh, and always stayed with me. I started. I think I might have started with Sly and Robbie. I'd worked with them before, and then brought in Mikey Chung and Robbie Lynn, and got the band back together. Now, I don't think they played as Word, Sound, and Power in like 25 years or something since before I did that. But then it came time to picking vocalists, and I think my first call was to Toots, simply because when you think of reggae vocals, I mean, who's better than Toots? I don't think anybody.
No one.
So I reached out to Gregory Isaacs, and was lucky to get him involved in the project. It was the tail end of his career. He wasn't the healthiest person, but I was able to get him on a bunch of the tracks before he had to bail out. And then I got Luciano to sit in on the tracks that he couldn't make it in for. And then, of course, I included Michael Rose. As Black Uhuru was a big favorite of mine back when they were dropping their classic albums. And I thought that would make a great group. And, I think it did. Of course, when I started mixing the record, I got all the vocals down. It always became difficult for me to mute anything Toots did because his vocals are so spectacular. But the concept was a vocal trio, so he fit in well to that, and I think it came out pretty well.
Oh yeah, and I mean, you heard the critics so far. They loving the way that you was able to bring all these powerhouses together, and just to be able to get Gregory Isaacs at the time that you was able to get him. Like, how was that? How was that like? Did you ever get to like chill with them in the studio or go out to eat with them or anything like that? Get some last minute with them?
I was with all of them in the studio, and we first started laying down the rhythms with the band and got pretty far with the songs that I had picked before we started trying to do vocals. And, what was interesting about the vocals is, while I'm not sure how familiar with all the songs all the singers were, they took the time, Toots would take those songs home and learn them inside and out, so much so that he could turn them into Toots songs, deliver them in the same way he would one of his classics, which I think he did a great job of doing. And then, Gregory, if you hear him on those songs, he sure still sounds like Gregory. He might have been weakened in body, but he still was able to sing and deliver those songs.
Spirit was still there, strong as ever. That's the beautiful part about it. When you hear these legends that most of them have passed on, you get to realize that it has a lot of meaning to you, and you spent some personal time with these legends that most of us dream of. Like, how does that, like, what does that mean to you personally?
Well, working with as many artists over the years as I have, I've found myself in situations where I'm working on tracks with people that I consider, just the ultimate legends. How do you get into a studio with Paul McCartney and work and not just fanboy your way through the whole day? And the answer is you just do. You have a plan and you do it. Um, and you know, the fact isn't lost that you're in the studio. It's like, oh, Toots, that's the guy who sang Pressure Drop, and there he is, and um, uh, but they're just people too, really, and they're in the studio because they thought the idea that I had was a good one, and they wanted to participate. So it was about focusing on the work and trying to make it the best possible version of what that could be. And it took a lot of effort to make it sound effortless.
And you have been doing it so long, it's like second nature to you. I was doing a lot of research on, one word that I was not finding that I believe that that should be attributed to anybody, that should be attributed to you, is the word super producer. Do you see yourself in that light? I mean, I'm looking behind you right now. I know you got the plaques for it.
It's been thrown about over the years, mostly lately because I'm older, and so it has been used. I wouldn't use it myself because I just feel like everything that I've worked on, it adds up to years and decades of my life and different ideas and things and experiences that I've been able to have and lucky enough to have involved myself in. And yeah, sure. I mean, once you've produced that kind of catalog, other people have written about me as super producer, but I just think of myself as a fan, like I said, and I've been lucky enough as someone who's a lover of music and different kinds of music to also be able to be business savvy enough to be able to conceive of and execute projects that bring these things to life. And it's interesting because obviously the Mighty Rootsmen is sort of like the traveling Wilburys of reggae, and it was just an idea that crossed my mind, and it stuck with me long enough to put it together and make it a reality. So that's the same with a lot of the records that I've made. Or people that I've worked with, not afraid of picking up the phone and calling people to see if they want to participate in things. And I was lucky enough to do so many movie soundtracks with various artists over the years that just so many people have been involved in my story that I share with them. You keep doing it for a long enough time, the list gets pretty long.
Definitely. I mean, you got an extensive list, and you don't find too many people with lists like that. We was just talking about earlier in one of my other podcasts how Bob Marley's Legends album finally, well, not finally, but has hit 1,200 weeks on the UK charts. And you start looking at like the power behind that. Like, people are still purchasing this album to the day, by the hundreds every day. And then you look at the work that you've put in, and it's like it's right up there in that same level. You have an extensive catalog that has attributed, and the one thing I wanted to say thank you for saying, because a lot of people lose sight when they get into the music industry that they were a fan first. And you have reiterated that several times so far. And I just want to thank you for that, because when people get in the music industry and they let them checks start flowing in, construes or it messes up their vision, and then they start producing work that doesn't resonate with the people anymore. What kind of advice would you give to somebody who feels like they're falling down that trap or falling into that void where the money is like driving their art versus their creativity?
Well, I wouldn't know because that's just never been my way. I just don't think that way. I think success has come because of the fact that I've been able to take like a young person's love and fandom of different musics, and when I was able and lucky enough to have the ability to make the records and make a living out of making the records, I never lost why I was making the records. There were always, so many of them were driven by my initial fandom. I mean, the whole idea that I basically invented the concept of the tribute album, many decades ago, that really came from me dreaming of ideas that would be cool to hear, that I thought would be fun for me to hear, and nobody else was putting them together. And I encountered initial skepticism from the record labels when I started, but once I was able to get, I think I had mentioned that the Grateful Dead tribute record that I made, that was kind of one of the first major label tribute album like that. And it was a big hit, and it sparked a whole genre and got me to make lots of records like that. And they all are born out of fandom. The fact that I'm able to go in the studio and make the record is another thing. Like, maybe there's a lot of people who can't do that. But since I'm lucky enough to be able to do that and have done it for decades and decades, I would say that I still am a fan. I go to shows all the time. I follow music still like I was, 12 years old. So, if you're able to be that kind of like, I lived and breathed I had a huge, like I said, I had a huge record collection. I lived and breathed it. I knew all the songs, and I knew who sung them, and I knew all the bands, and I turned that around, and as a professional became one of the biggest music supervisors in the movie business, putting music in movies. And, that also only would have happened if simply because I was a fan and knew songs that could make moments happen in movies that were special. So, I think it's a little bit of like, figure out what you love and, get really good at it.
Right, man. I wish I would have had your story when I was young, because my mom used to tell me, I used to tell her all about the new latest songs that came out, not only who sung them, but who produced them, who they sampled, and all of that. And she used to look at me, why do you have all this useless information in your head? And I would have been able to turn around and be like, because I could have been like Ralph Sall and been producing all of the greats. What you mean?
Well, also don't listen to your parents as much, because my parents thought that was pretty useless knowledge too. It turned out not to be pretty useless knowledge.
I'm telling you, I mean, you pretty much started a whole genre and inspired generations of people. I mean, you can't get no more useful than that right there. Oh yeah. Now, when it comes to blending heritage musicians with like new vocalists, was that like your way of bridging the generations in reggae and
Were you talking
even
about the
in
Kingston
other
Lions?
genres?
That's part of the story of the Kingston Lions. Kingston Lions came about a lot to do with Mikey Chung and his cohorts who had played on so many hundreds of classic reggae songs, going back to the Studio One days, and for like Boris Gardner and Patrick McDonald and Mikey Boo and Sticky Thompson, and if you counted the number of reggae classics those guys had played on, I mean, it's innumerable, really. And I thought the focus for that record really was squarely on the players, and that's why I kind of called it the Buena Vista Social Club of reggae, because if the Buena Vista Social Club shed light on the classic players of that genre and put the focus on them, and that's what I think the focus is on the Kingston Lions. The fact that the three young singers who sing the songs, blend really well together and sound, like if you listen to Soul Shakedown Party by the Kingston Lions, it gives major Wailer vibes on the vocal side. And, I thought they did a great job, but they definitely take a back seat to the legends that are playing in the room. I was trying in that instance to re-expose these classic reggae songs to potential new generation, where like your memory of a lot of those songs are one thing, and sometimes if you listen to some of the original recordings, some of them they sound their age. A lot of times they maybe a little thin, a little tinny, and I wanted to make a record that sounded like had current production values, and because you hear the songs and they certainly put you in the mind frame of the originals, but then go back and listen to the originals and see which one sounds sonically better. Not to say not to say that I was trying to supplant any of those original classics. They're classics for a reason, but I want to expose them to a current audience who's used to hearing a certain level of audio quality.
Did you ever think that you may be risking watering down the Roots, even though that didn't happen? Did you ever think that that may have been a possibility?
Not with those players. I mean, the Roots were in the room. I mean, they were there. They could go on and on about classic album about a classic album that they were responsible for. So I felt I was, in many ways setting it up. With Mikey, we together picked a song list of songs to visit during those sessions. And I really let the players play. Sometimes the value of a producer is what you don't say in the moment, because you don't want to ruin the moment. Sometimes producers feel like they have to talk and put their stamp on everything all the time. But, when you pick the right players, put them together and let them start playing, I want to hear what's going to happen when that happens. And then if I have some helpful comments here and there, I'll chime in. But, a lot of what you hear, it was really the organic talents of the legends that are in the room.
Right. Yeah, you got a point there. You can put a lot of naysayers to rest with that one right there. Now, whenever you got classics like that, you have the like you say, you have the roots in the room. Do you ever take it upon yourself to introduce them to the new generation, or set it up to where they can work with the new generation of artists so that they can, and this is outside of Kingston Lions, like in any genre, just pretty much make it an initiative to try to bridge that generations.
Well, I think that whatever the genre is, I have been lucky enough to have a stable of classic players that are masters of their craft, and they'll come and play on whatever it is that I have going on, and bring a level of talent and professionalism and it's like I like to say, nothing makes a producer sound as good as putting the right band in the room. That's the best way to sound great. Have great players.
Okay, you right about that. And with the youth that's coming up now, do you work with a lot of them, or is a certain levels to this?
Well, I mean, these days I work on projects that I feel like. I mean, I don't. I'm not in there every single day like I used to. And for the last little while, I've been working on a lot of my own music, which I started making 30 years ago, and have put in a lot of movies and soundtrack albums over the years, but I've never really concentrated on getting those my songs out. And believe me, on that band is called All Too Much, and the players on that are stunning. I mean, just the best. So
Okay,
just stay tuned.
We got that to look forward to.
It's coming soon. Yeah.
Already. And what's the name of it? It's called All Too Much?
Yeah, that's the name of the band. Should be dropping some stuff before the end of the year. Yeah, it's got some amazing players on it. And has that's been being worked on, for the last couple years, and but some of the songs stretch back to the 90s that I reinterpreted for now. And it's just one of many of my current projects that are awaiting release. I have, if anyone who's listening to your stuff likes the Mighty Rootsmen and the Kingston Lions, I'm happy to say that there's follow-up albums coming for both of those projects.
Okay.
Probably in the earlier part of next year, or spring, I would guess, next year.
Well, that's perfect to hear. Like, when people hit that play button on the project now, like, what do you want them to like feel deep in their spirit? Like, what do you want them to get?
Well, on the Mighty Rootsmen, I think that it's special to be able to turn it on and hear Toots and Gregory. You're not going to hear them again,
Right.
but you can always hear them on their classic records, but like I was able to get them, one last time, and I picked the classic rock and pop songs that we did, because they all gave me a kind of a vibe of summer, sunshine, friendship, positive vibes was what I was really trying to send with the song selection that made it onto that record. And with the Kingston Lions record, I just, the first volume, which is the one that people can go out and hear now, it has a lot of songs which had in one way or another some international success and recognizability. My second volume of that is, I think, a lot deeper roots songs than the ones that are on the first record. But people can listen to those, and it'll test your reggae knowledge, because those songs, then you're happy to hear them in like the current fidelity that I recorded them in. But I think a lot of people might not know some of those deep cuts that we did. And it just sounds like an amazing reggae record to me. I love the sound of the band. I think it's sad the number of players that have passed since I went in and recorded with them. But, such is the nature of things. And luckily, the music outlives everyone, and people can still hear them.
Yes, exactly. And that's the beautiful part about it. It's like capturing voices in a time capsule. We can always revisit it whenever we get lonely, when we miss them, the way that they made us feel when we was down, or when we was up, or when we was like just whatever. We can always revisit that, and that nostalgia is what makes life worth living.
In these two projects, I also was clearly making, classic roots style reggae vibes, which also, reggae continues, but it doesn't sound like that so much anymore. And
Right.
And so I was making records that were love letters to the records that I grew up with, and loved. And, I think that's a little bit of why you can't ever find some, you can throw a rock and hit anyone and they'll have Bob Marley legend.
Right.
The music is timeless. The style is timeless. It's just that there aren't as many people, playing in that way. Even I can remember going down to Kingston in the early 90s to work with Sly and Robbie on something. And at the time, Sly, he didn't want to play his acoustic drum kit. He was like, he had his electric kit out and was like, this is what's happening in Jamaica right now.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, but, I didn't come all the way here for what's happening today. I came because you're Sly Dunbar and like you can play the kit like nobody else. So let's try to do that,
Right. Right.
But it's different when you're a session player like that who, continued to make hits, when it became a little more electronic in the 80s and 90s. He certainly, worked with those rhythms, and it's just not where my love is more the organic roots sound of reggae, which I think will never get old.
Right. And you're keeping it alive. You're definitely keeping it alive. And real quick, do you think we'll ever return? You think there'll be a wave of new generation roots that go back to the roots
Well, it would be nice to see it happen. It's just, I think if you're chasing current hits, it's just not the sound of, it's not dance hall. It's not influenced by hip hop as much as the things are today. Um, do I think those songs are going to be around 50 years from now? I don't know. Every generation has their nostalgia, but I doubt it.
Right. Right.
Are they?
Exactly.
The second you put on, you know, Bob Marley's first Island record and hear Concrete Jungle, you're in it. And I was in it for life at
Exactly.
that point. And I don't get the same feeling from a lot of the more current sounding things. I mean, you may have a hit today, but 50 years from now, the proof is in the pudding. You can still hear Pressure Drop. You can still hear Monkey Man. You can still hear all
Yes.
these songs, like ones that I did on the Kingston Lions, whether it's, Armageddon Time or War in a Babylon. Um, those songs are just all-time greatest songs, reggae or not
Right.
reggae. I mean, they're just fantastic, fantastic examples of a golden period of music. Do I think there's going to be another golden period of music like that one? I don't, because that was a moment in time and a thing that was happening then, and it all came together to make that happen. And if I can do my little part in keeping that kind of vibe alive. But, even in the early 90s in the US, there was a period where there was a lot of kind of pop reggae hits that
Yeah.
I mean, I produced one with the band General Public, a version of the song
Okay.
I'll Take You There. I think that was in '94. That was a big hit at a time where the reggae rhythms were being incorporated. It was the time of a lot of songs like that, and that could come back around. It's possible, but I make records that that I think I will like, and I think that there's enough people that love music like I do that can relate to what it is that I do, and that can find something that they love in those projects.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I mean, like you said, once they put on that roots, I mean, they could be listening to this new age right now, and then soon as they get introduced to that roots, because that's how Pandora's set up. You think you're gonna be listening to Vibes Cartel or Coffee for the whole stretch, but once they get played out, and you just let that play, that roots start kicking in, and then you're never gonna go. You're really never gonna go back. You're stuck in that. It's always gonna be a part of you. So definitely want to say thank you for re. Oh, go ahead. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And I was going to say that, that reflects my personal preference. And I like to think that I'm in tune enough that, like, the things that I like have a broad appeal to people. And I think if people get a chance to hear those records, they will embrace them.
Definitely. They definitely will. Definitely. So you say you was working on yours. Like, let us know a little bit more about what else you got going. You're working on your music, and you also got other projects that's in the play right now, or you just relaxing and working on yours.
I've got the upcoming volumes of these reggae artists that will be back next year, and I've got a special project that I did an inspirational album of U2's music, with a kind of gospel choir vibe that should be coming shortly, and some other special projects that are a little bit further away, but hopefully will be done for next year. But right now, I'm excited about the projects we're talking about because they just came out, and in today's world with everyone having so much going on and so much noise all around everything, I want to try to make sure that people know that the records exist and they can listen to them, and I think listening to them makes you a fan of them. So here's hoping that continues to happen.
Definitely. Well, tell us where they can find you and where they can find these albums at.
Well, I mean, the albums are streaming on all major services. The Mighty Rootsmen and the Kingston Lions. They're in store on both vinyl and CD. So, the vinyl sounds amazing. If you want to check it out, the artwork is killer on both of those records. And by all means, listen to it on streaming, and when you like it enough, go buy the physical copies of them.
That's right. You always want to go get that vinyl, because that vinyl is going to last a lot longer than that CD will, and it's going to have that quality, grainy sound that you're going to. Once you put on that vinyl, it's like you don't want to chill and listen to music any other way.
It's how I grew up with it, so. It's always got a place in the heart.
Alrighty, well, we're towards the end of our interview, and is there anybody that you want to give a shout out to, or any news that you want to drop, or anything like that?
Well, I think we've covered it. I encourage people take time out of their busy schedules to chill a little bit with the Mighty Rootsmen and the Kingston Lions. And I promise that when you listen to it, you'll feel better than before you listen to it, and, that's saying a lot. Everyone could use a good ear experience. And I think this delivers that.
Perfect. Well, y'all already know what it is. Go and check it out. It's on all streaming services. And once you get through streaming it, go pick you up a vinyl copy. Even if you don't have a record player, go pick you up one simply for the nostalgia. I can't even get it out. Just pick it up for the nostalgia. Pick it up because in 50 years, you're going to be explaining to your grandkids what kind of art this is. And it's the most.
Yeah. And also there's great liner notes in both of the records, written by the author of The Oral History of Reggae. And he also wrote the biography of Lee Scratch Perry, and he did a great job writing liner notes for both of those records. So there's some stuff to read there.
The historical value alone in there is enough to make me. All right. So next my podcast, I'm gonna be showing y'all my copy, straight like that. Already, Ralph Sall, thank you for joining us here on Reggae Hour. And as we wrap up this fascinating conversation with Ralph Sall, we reflect on the profound impact of his work in bridging the past and present of reggae music. Through ambitious projects like the Mighty Rootsmen and the Kingston Lions, Ralph not only honors the legacy of reggae legends, but also paves the way for future explorations of the genre. Thank you, Ralph, for sharing your journey and insights with us. Your commitment to preserving cultural heritage while innovating within the genre is a true testament to your artistic vision. To our listeners, we invite you to explore Ralph Sall's projects available on all streaming platforms and support his mission of bringing reggae's influential history to new audiences. Stay tuned to Reggae Hour podcast for more in-depth interviews with the artists and creators shaping the soundscapes of reggae. Keep the vibes alive and continue to celebrate the timeless rhythms of reggae. Until next time, one love. Thank you for riding these reggae waves with me on Reggae Hour. If this episode hits your soul, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share the message. Follow me on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Links in the show notes. Next week, a hidden roots icon whose story will blow your mind. Until then, keep the music alive. One love.
Greetings, master, but this is Tasha T representing for the Reggae Hour, you done know.